Welcome back. In our previous lessons, we've explored lists a lot. Now it's time to introduce another data structure. That data structure is similar to list, and that is tuples. Tuples are like lists, but they have a key difference. That key difference is they are immutable. You can't change their content after they are created. This makes tuples ideal for storing data that should remain constant. So what are tuples, or what is a tuple? A tuple is an ordered collection of items, just like a list, but it is immutable. This means you can create a tuple, you can access its elements, and you can iterate through it, but you cannot modify a tuple. To create a tuple, you use parentheses, otherwise known as brackets, unlike a list where you use square brackets. So the syntax for tuple is, let's say we want to create an empty tuple now for a start, okay? So to create a tuple, you use parentheses, right? So this is just a simple tuple that is containing no elements, okay? So if we print this now, let's print empty tuple. So we are going to have empty tuple printed in our console, okay? So you have an empty tuple printed, okay? So if we check the type of this empty tuple, so we are going to use the tuple, we are going to use the type function to check. I'm going to use the type function to check our empty tuple. We have empty tuple. Okay, so we need one more bracket. Right, if you run that now, you can see that the data type of empty tuple now is a tuple. Okay, so this is how you create a tuple. A tuple uses bracket or parentheses. Okay, so you can also use the tuple constructor function to create an empty tuple. Just like we have list, we also have tuple that creates an empty tuple. This is supposed to be tuple, not typo, tuple, all right? So if we print empty tuple now, okay, actually comment this out, right? So now you see that we have an empty tuple. Okay, so to create a tuple with items, let's say we want to create a tuple of latitude and longitude, we can call that coordinates. So we can say coordinate is equal to, okay, so we have a bracket to start a tuple. Then we can have the longitude. Let's say longitude is 40.7128. All right. And then the latitude is going to be negative 74.0060. This is just an example. So tuples, they are almost the same as lists, but they are immutable. So you cannot add, you cannot remove, you cannot update the items in a tuple, but you can access, you can iterate over them and do every other thing. Okay. Tuple can also hold multiple data types. So you can have a string, you can have a number. Let's call this, or what should we call it? Let's call it person. Okay, let's say we have a tuple of person. Okay, so it can contain string. Let's say the name of this person is, can say is Joe. Okay. Let's say Joe is 32 years old. All right. So we can also say Joe has a true property. Okay. Just to iterate that a tuple can also have multiple data types. So you are not limited to a single data type. You can mix multiple data type in a tuple. All right. So I'm printing person now. Okay. So we have Joe 32 and true. So to access tuple element, just like a list, we use the square bracket notation with the index of item we want to access. Okay, so let's say we want to access the first item in the person tuple now. So we're going to have square brackets, okay, and then we're going to provide the index of the item we want to access, which is 0 for the first item, all right? So if we print that now, you see that the first item is Joe. Okay, let's comment this out so we don't have that again. If we want to access the second item, we are going to use the index of 1. Okay, so if I run that now, what do we have? Okay, so we have 32 printed in our console. Okay, so use the square bracket notation to access the content of a tuple, just like a list. Okay, now talking about immutability in tuple, let's try to change an item in this tuple and then we see what we have. Okay, let's comment this out. All right, let's say we want to change the first item in person tuple. So let's say we have the index of 0, and then we want to assign that to, let's say we want to change the name to John. All right, so if I run this now, you can see that we run into type error. This is because tuple does not support item assignment. That means after you've created a tuple, you can no longer modify the content of that tuple. You cannot add to it, you cannot remove from it, and then you cannot modify the content. All right, so that is tuple immutability. So being that we cannot modify the content of a tuple, what is now the function of a tuple? Tuple is used to store settings or data that are not meant to be changed, like configuration settings, like GPS coordinate. You know, the GPS location of a place does not change forever and ever. So you can use tuple to store that, and other data that are not meant to be changed. So you use tuple for storing data like that. Even though tuples are immutable, you can still perform some other operations with tuple. For example, you can check if an item is present in a tuple. How do you do that? You use the in keyword. For example, we want to check if Joe is present in the person tuple. So to do that, we're going to say Joe. Okay, so we want to check if Joe is present in the person tuple. Okay, now let's print this. It's going to return true if what we are looking for is present. It's going to return false if what we are looking for is not present. Okay, so I'm going to print that. Now we have true because Joe is present in the person tuple. Okay, now let's change this to John and see if we're also going to have true. Okay, now we have false because John is not present in person tuple, right? We can also count the number of times an element occurs in a tuple using the count method, just like we did with string. Let's say we have Joe 2 times now. Okay, so we can count the number of times. Okay, so let's say we have person dot count. All right, then let's say we want to count for Joe. Okay, so this is going to be Joe. We want to count the number of times Joe occur in the person tuple. So you can see now that we have 2 times because we have 1 and then we have 2. Okay, so that's how you count the number of times of occurrence of an item in a tuple. We can also iterate through a tuple. Okay, so to iterate through a tuple, we use the for loop. Okay, so we can say item in the name of the tuple. So let's print item now. Okay, so if we run this, so we have Joe, we have 32, we have true, we have Joe. Okay, so this is how to loop through a tuple. And you can also pass the tuple here directly. You don't have to like assign it to a variable compulsorily. Let's say we have a tuple of colors. So we have red. Let's say we have red, we have green. Okay, and let's say we have blue. Okay, so we can iterate over them and then we print them. So we have red, green, and blue. Okay, so we can print the items to uppercase. We run this now, that means all of them will be printed in uppercase, depending on whatever operation you want to perform. We can also get the index of a certain item in a tuple. Let's say we want to get the index of, okay, let's say we want to get the index of true now in this tuple. Okay, so to get that, let me comment this out. Let's say I want to get the index of true in the person tuple. So I'm going to say person, all right, dot index. Okay, so I want to get the index of true. Okay, so let's print that and see what it returns for us. I'm going to print that. If I run this now, okay, so you can see that the index of true is 2. Okay, this is 0, 1, and 2. Okay, so if we want to check the index of an item that is occurring more than once, okay, so it's going to return the first index it encounters. Now we have just the first item here, we have just the last item here. So it's going to return the index of the first one it encounters. Okay, if we run that now, you see we have 0 as the index of Joe. Okay, there is something we call tuple unpacking. We can unpack a tuple by assigning its items to variables sequentially. Okay, so that means if you want to unpack a tuple, the content of that tuple will be assigned to variables sequentially. Okay, so let's say we want to unpack this person tuple now. Okay, let me comment this out. Right, so let's say we want to unpack this. Let's say the first item is name. Okay, so let's say that's name. Let's say the second item is age. What do we call the third item? Or let's say random. Don't know what we should call that. we're going to say is equal to person. Okay, let's get rid of this so we don't have for repetition. Okay, now if I run this now, let's print name, age, and random. I'm going to print name, all right, age, all right, and then we have random. So if we print those now, we're going to see name to be equal to Joe, we have age to be 32, and then we have random to be true. Okay, so this is how you unpack a tuple. Whenever you do tuple unpacking, the content of that tuple will be assigned to the variables that you provided. Right, just before we wrap up, I need you to know that it is not compulsory. When you are creating your tuple, it is not compulsory that you use parentheses. Okay, so you can just create your tuple without parentheses. For example, if I get rid of this, this is still a valid tuple. If I run this now, we still achieve the same result. So it is not compulsory for you to use parentheses when you are creating a tuple. Okay, but most of the times you are going to see parentheses just for consistency's sake. All right. So that's that for that. Now you know what tuples are, how they differ from lists, and how to use them effectively. Tuples are an excellent choice for storing data that shouldn't change. In the next lesson, we'll explore another data structure called dictionaries. Okay, so I will see you in the next lesson.